All right, we have a very full agenda today, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I know Councilmember Jurinsky will not be on. Um, so with that, we'll go right to approval of the minutes for the June 25th meeting. Councilmember Lawson, are you okay with the minutes from the June 25th meeting?
I'm good with the minutes.
And I am as well, so those are approved. First up, Bill Levine, June 2024 sales tax chart.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for putting the chart up. I can probably be pretty brief. I'm going to talk a little bit about the results here in 2024. We did have a very good June, up 11.6% compared to June 2023. And I guess what I want to do, I've said this every month, and I apologize, I'm sort of a broken record when I say let's not over-focus on a single month's results. What we're expecting for 2024 is growth to be in the range of 4 to maybe 4.5%. And so if you look on the bottom right of that chart, there's a 4.1% number down there, and that's the year-to-date growth across all 6 months. So oddly, we don't have a single month that you could look at it and go, oh, it fits that pattern that we're projecting, that 4 to 4.5% growth. All of them have really been pretty far away from what we think the annual number will be, but averaging across all those numbers, we're right where we think we're going to be. We're actually about 1.3 million or 0.9% ahead of the budget plan. So despite sort of the dramaticness of the big numbers like we're seeing in June, or those two negative numbers we're seeing, we're really right where we should be, again, just a hair above 1.3 million above the budget plan. So at a very high level, that's what I'm seeing. And knowing you have a lot going on, I'll leave it there unless you want me to get into some of the details of what I'm seeing.
Great. Councilmember Lawson, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, committee. Thank you.
Moving into the agenda, first up, we have our annual CABC update from Danielle Lamon, the CABC chair. Danielle.
I'll go ahead and start. Oh, there she is. This is Greg Hayes, budget officer. I just wanted to set you up, madame. Every year, our CABC chair gets to come and talk to you all about the cool things they're doing. And with that, here's Danielle.
Thanks, everybody. I apologize. I'm not sure what's happening, but my camera's not available. So sorry that you just have to hear my voice. Again, I'm Danielle Lamon. I'm the chair for CABC. And at the moment for an update, we are actually tonight and tomorrow having our annual workshop, budget workshop meetings, and going to be putting together our presentations for our subcommittee work. So the theme this year is the overall fiscal health of the city. So what to expect when we present in September is how everything relates back to the overall theme of the fiscal health of the city. And so we've got a safety, well-managed, connected, and engaged, and economically strong subcommittees that will be presenting on various reports from that perspective. We have had quorum every month this year, which has been amazing. And that's kind of it, unless you have questions. It's short and sweet. We're running really well this year, so nothing major to report on.
Great. Well, Danielle is my appointee, so I'm glad that you're here and glad to do the thanks for your update. Councilmember Lawson, any questions or comments or anything?
No questions, just a comment. Thank you for all you're doing. I look forward to hearing the presentations.
Great.
Thank you. And I'm available if you have any other questions too later on.
All right. Thanks, Danielle. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we will go into the next item, Katie Rodriguez, Aurora Election Code Update.
Hi, Katie Rodriguez, City Clerk. I have Andrea Wood from our City Attorney's Office and Kathy Haddock from an outside counsel. She's helped a lot of different municipalities with their election code, and she assisted with this revision as well. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Okay, so just a bit of an overview of the election code. Chapter 54 is divided into separate articles for different types of election issues. We have 3 articles that are dedicated to citizen-initiated petition requirements. Those are for recalls, initiative and referendum, and charter amendments. And then there's 1 article that's dedicated solely to campaign finance requirements. And there are structural and procedural inconsistencies within this chapter that prompted this review and the following recommendations. The first recommendation is related to citizen-initiated petitions. The current requirements and processes used by citizens are not consistent within the 3 articles for citizen-initiated petitions. There's no basis for these differences, and these inconsistencies often make it confusing for the citizens and hard for staff to implement. We recommend that individualized petition requirements be removed from each article and consolidated into 1 new article. This new article will be where residents can easily find all petition requirements, including staff review, signature requirements, in the process for protests. So the new article will include the following sections: petition format requirements, signature requirements, withdrawal of signature process, the initial determination of sufficiency and protests related to that, ballot title and submission clause and protests related to that, the presentation of the petition to council, and any unlawful acts. So there's a few changes in the new article that we are proposing. First, we would like to allow the city clerk to provide the form of the petition. This ensures that the form of the petition is standardized and includes all the required elements so that the petition representative and the city clerk's office don't have to keep going back and forth. Amend the protest deadline to 30 days instead of 20 days after the initial determination of sufficiency is issued. This mimics state statute. Allow the city clerk to appoint a hearing officer for protest hearings. In the current code, the city clerk is the hearing officer for all protests regarding initial determination of sufficiency. Allow the city clerk or appointed hearing officer to administer oaths for the protest hearings. This is to reduce cost. In the current code, we have to have a certified court reporter administer all the oaths. And then allow protest hearings to be set as soon as 5 days instead of 10 days after the date of the hearing notice is sent. This reduces the wait time for a public hearing and allows the process to move forward in a timely manner. Allow registered electors to remove their signature from a petition by filing a written request with the city clerk. Previously, petition signers would have to file a formal protest and go through entire protest hearing if they wanted to remove their signature. Allow any registered elector, not just petition representatives, to submit a protest to the city clerk regarding ballot title and submission clause. The current code only allows petition representatives to protest the ballot title or submission clause, so this requires other registered electors to go straight to district court. And then here are the proposed updates to existing articles in the chapter. For recall petitions, add that recall petitions cannot be circulated if the office is up for re-election within 6 months. This mirrors state statute. So currently the code just says that you cannot circulate a recall petition if they haven't held office for 6 months, and this includes that if they're up for re-election within 6 months. Add the requirement that signed recall petitions must be filed with the city clerk no later than 60 days from the date the petition form was approved. The current code does not specify the length of time for circulation. This date also mimics state statute. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice, but I'm pushing through. So make the code consistent with the charter by changing the date for a recall election to be held within 90 days instead of 120 days from the date the final determination of sufficiency is issued. And then for charter amendments, require a petition for a charter amendment initiative ordinance to be filed with the city clerk no later than 90 days instead of 120 days from the date the petition form was approved. This also mimics state statute. And so with these proposals, the recommended process, this would be the process that comes out of the proposals. So for initiative, referendum, and charter amendment petitions, the petition representatives would submit their statement of intent to circulate. The city clerk would determine whether the proposal meets municipal legislation and single subject requirements and prepares the summary for the petition. The petition format is provided to the petition representatives for circulation, and the city clerk reviews each submitted petition section and issues a written statement reflecting whether the petition contains the required number of signatures. This is known as the initial determination of sufficiency. The city clerk will also set the ballot title and submission clause. And then after the passage of the protest period, the final determination of sufficiency is issued. And then this is after that, the petition and the determination is presented to city council at a regular or special council meeting. And the proposed process for recall petitions would be the petition representative would file their statement of no more than 200 words stating the reason for the recall. The city clerk will notify the council member, and they will be able to file a statement of no more than 500 words in response. Then the city clerk will issue a determination as to whether the proposal meets all city code requirements. And the city clerk would provide the final petition form to the petition representatives for circulation. The petition form includes the reason for the recall and the response from the council member. The city clerk will review all the submitted petition sections and issue a written statement reflecting whether the petition contains the required number of signatures. This is the initial determination of sufficiency. And then the ballot title and submission clause would be set. The final determination of sufficiency would be issued following the protest period, and the petition and determination is presented to city council. And then the second structural change we are recommending is to the campaign finance. So many definitions used only for campaign finance are mixed in with the definitions applicable to the whole chapter, and this makes the definitions cumbersome. We recommend moving the campaign finance definitions from Article 1 General to Article 4 Campaign Finance. And this is the only change that we are recommending at this time to campaign finance. All right, that is my entire presentation, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councilmember Lawson, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just one, Councilmember Gardner. So Katie, I just had a question. So it looks like a lot of this we're moving over to so it can be related to the current state statute. What was it that caused this? Was this an audit that had to be done, or did you guys just find things in the process that needed to be in correspondence with state statute and then just changes because there was confusion?
So there was no audit. We recently went through a charter amendment process, and through that entire process, we found procedural inefficiencies and portions that, I'm sorry, I don't know why. We found processes that were not aligned with each other throughout the charter. And then that's what made us want to look at this chapter and then look at the state statute to see if we could mimic some of the state statute.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Gardner, I approve moving this forward.
Okay, thank you. Katie, can you clarify the section on your recommendations for campaign finance definitions? I just want to make sure I understand. So currently, the definitions for the entire election code are all in the same section, even though some of those are only applicable to campaign finance. And you're saying it, I guess I'm not under, so if they're only applicable, I guess I'm not understanding why, like, what makes that cumbersome? If we know that they're only applicable to campaign finance, why are we needing to change it? I guess I'm not following.
Yeah, so under the Article 1 General, that's where all of the definitions for elections are. right? There are a lot of definitions in there. And
Yeah.
so when we get into campaign finance and we're assisting with committees and candidates and with the public, they're having to sort through all of the definitions that apply to citizen initiated petitions and to the election when all they're really needing is the definitions for their committees. And so for us to take that from the beginning of the chapter and place it directly into what it pertains to is making it easier for the citizens and for committees and candidates to go directly to that one spot to look at everything for campaign finance.
Okay, so it's easier for people running for office and whatever is what you're saying.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, I'm okay moving this forward as well. Thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Nancy Wishmeyer, 2023 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and Audit Results.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Wishmeyer, the City Controller, and with us today on the call is Carmen Jeffries. And Carmen is a director at Forbes Mazars. They are our external audit firm. And Carmen's going to review with you certain information regarding the 2023 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR, and the results of the audits. But I'll first provide just a brief overview before I turn it over to Carmen. So the city's 2023 audited financial statements and the single audit have both been completed, and they're ready to be placed on the city's internet. So we are going to send to you and all of council links to those reports within just a few days. Now, in your packet, you have the Forbes Mazars Audit Committee report, and this report summarizes the financial audit, the results of the single audit of federal grants. It also identifies any issues or other reportable items that were encountered during the audit. And then attached to the report, you'll see a schedule of audit adjustments that were passed for correction, which basically means we did not record those items due to them being deemed immaterial. And then also attached is the management rep letter. So this outlines all of the representations that city management is making to the auditors. And then finally, the report includes the single audit report. And again, that provides results of the audit of the federal grant funds that the city expended during 2023. So concerning the financial audit, we received an unmodified or clean audit opinion on the 2023 financial statements. And we were notified this year that once again, the city had received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And that was for the 2022 ACFR. So now the city's received that award for the past 37 consecutive years. And this is a really important award because it shows that city staff follows the principles that are required and the best practices for governmental accounting and reporting. And then concerning the single audit of our federal grants, we also received an unmodified or clean opinion on the single audit. We did have one single audit finding, but there were no control deficiencies or weaknesses identified. And of note, the city is still considered a low-risk auditee under the Federal Uniform Grant Guidance Standards. So now I'll turn it over to Carmen, and she will share the auditor's perspectives with you.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself and I couldn't find the mute button. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to go on with the information that is presented on the screen. Which one would you guys prefer as I go through the presentation?
Why don't you go ahead and share your screen if you can, Carmen?
Okay. And there is not an option for me to share.
Got it. Okay, you might not be a presenter because of how technology works. So let's go back, Sherry, to presenting for
Carmen, and Carmen, you can see when we're presenting, can you?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
And so I'll just
so
I'll just go take you through this through the slides.
Sure. So
Okay,
we'll scroll
terrific.
on down.
Yes, please. Okay, so yes, please stop there. So definitely want to thank you for the opportunity. As Nancy said, I am Carmen Jeffries. I am the director on the engagement here at Forbes Mazars. Marcy Ardan, who is the managing director on the engagement, is actually out on sabbatical. So that is why she is not here with you guys, but definitely would have liked to have been here to present as well. So we will start on page 1, which is here, and this goes over the overview of responsibilities, high level of what we will be going through. I will be presenting at a very high level, so I will not be reading the entire presentation. If there are things as I'm going through that you see that you'd like additional information on, please ask. I have no problem making this conversational rather than me just going through quite a few slides. So please ask the questions as I go along, and we will go ahead and get started. So if you can go on to the next page, please. All right, the scope of our audit. Our report covers the audit results related to the financial statements and supplementary information as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2023. It was conducted in accordance with our contract that was dated November 30th of 2023. Our responsibilities, we are responsible for forming and expressing an opinion about whether the financial statements have been prepared by management with your oversight are prepared in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Our audit is performed in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States and government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We are required to design and obtain a reasonable rather than absolute assurance about the financial statements. Therefore, we look at a sample of items and do not look at every transaction. If you'll go to the next slide, please. Your responsibilities, our audit does not relieve management or those charged with governance of your responsibilities, and those are outlined in our contract. As I stated, we do issue in accordance with government auditing standards, and from there, we provided an internal control opinion over the financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on our audit of the financial statements performed in accordance with GIGAS. If you'll go to the next page, please. And then, in accordance with uniform guidance, we provided reports dated December 31st, as of December 31st, the opinion on compliance for each major federal award program, report on internal control over compliance, and the schedule of federal expenditures and federal awards. All of those are related to the single audit. For the single audit's perspective, we also obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance. So in that instance, we look at a sample as well, and we review to ensure that things that are considered to be direct and material to a major federal program, that no non-compliance has occurred. Our audit is considered a group audit, and so therefore we have referred to other auditors within our report. We did not audit the financial statements of the Havana Business Improvement District, the Parkside City Center Business Improvement District, nor the Citadel on Colfax Business Improvement District. Those all represent the accurately, discretely presented component units of the city. Those statements were audited by other auditors, and their report has been furnished to us. And in our opinion, based on the information included there, we included the information from their reports. We did have communications with those other auditors during planning, if you go to the next page, and throughout the audit regarding their qualifications, independence, and discuss with them materiality as well to ensure that we were aware of what was being referred to in our audit report. The financial statements are presented along with management's annual comprehensive financial report. We were not engaged to audit that information. However, we do read it to ensure that there is consistency throughout the report and our financial statements. And if there's anything that contradicts anything, we do bring that to management's attention. our objectives related to other information are noted here before, and I won't read all of those that are noted here, but this just really discusses what we're looking for, what we remain alert for as we continue throughout the audit procedures. If you will go to the next slide, please, whereby we will start to discuss the qualitative aspects of our significant accounting policies and practices. So if you'll go to the next page, please. Okay, significant accounting policies are noted in, described in note 1 of the audited financial statements. There was one new accounting standard in the current year, which was GASB 96 subscription-based information technology arrangements, or what we refer to as SABITIS or GASB 96. So that was a large lift for the city in the current year. So that was the one policy and the new standard that was adopted. There was nothing unusual to report, no alternative accounting treatments that were unusual to report. You'll go to the next slide. We go on to discuss management's judgments and estimates. And there we review the judgments and estimates. The significant ones are noted here. And we really look at those for reasonableness and have discussions on how those were actually determined. So those are the items that we look at. We also review disclosures, significant ones primarily, and discuss and ensure that what is required to be disclosed has been disclosed. As I discussed, we looked at the application of that new accounting pronouncement, GASB 96. So we went through, discussed with the city how it was going to be implemented and the accounting principles and policies that were being established because of that implementation. Go to the next slide. As Nancy discussed, there are adjustments, and we are required to report those adjustments to you. There were no proposed and reported adjustments, but there were unrecorded adjustments, which Nancy mentioned, that are included in your package. And the fact that none were considered material to the financial statements as a whole, individually, or in the aggregate. You go to the next slide. Other required communications, we had no disagreements with management, no significant issues that were discussed prior to, but during the audit process, we talked about GASB 96 in depth. We had no difficulties during the audit, and the only material communication that Nancy noted, the management representation letter. However, we always make note that we have discussions and provide oral areas where things could be improved throughout the audit. And we had discussions over those, but none were considered material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Before I finish this section, we do have a few future accounting pronouncements that are on the way. GASB Statement 100 is called the Accounting Changes and Error Corrections. And this really is a standard whereby it's changing the way those error corrections and accounting changes are presented in the financial statements. This pronouncement is effective for fiscal years beginning after June 15th, 2023. Thereby, this will be effective for fiscal year 2024. GASB Statement 101, Compensated Absences, which is a little more detailed. And hereby, we are updating the recognition and measurement guidance for compensated absences. And it's really going under a unified model, so everyone is going to do it the same. This standard is effective for fiscal years beginning after December 15th, 2023. So therefore, this will be in effect for the city in fiscal year 2024. So there will be 2 new accounting principles next year. GASB Statement 102, you go to the last slide here. That one has to do with providing more information about risk and vulnerabilities that the government has. It's called Certain Risk Disclosures, GASB 102. That is effective for fiscal years beginning after June 15, 2024. So we have another year before that will be required. Last slide here goes through the attachments that Nancy went through, which is going to be the single audit, the management representation letter, as well as the schedule of uncorrected misstatements. Are there any questions over anything that I have discussed thus far?
Councilmember Lawson, any questions so far?
I have no questions so far.
Okay.
I don't need so far.
All right, beautiful. If we'll go to the next page, probably the next 3 or 4 pages. Oh, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. One more. One more. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Couple more. Stop. Backtrack. Back 3 pages. Stop. There we go. That's the one I need. Go forward. That's it. We got there. Okay. This here is our schedule of findings and question calls, and it really is a summary of the single audit, a lot of which Nancy has gone through, but I do have to provide this information to you all. From a financial statements perspective, as Nancy said, you all received an unmodified opinion, which is the clean opinion. It's the best that you can receive. There were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses related to the financial statements, nor was there any non-compliance material to the financial statements noted. For the federal awards over internal control, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses identified, and the audit report was unmodified there. So there was one finding that was required to be disclosed, which Nancy alluded to a few seconds ago, which I will talk about also. The major federal programs that we audited were the CDBG Entitlement Grant Cluster, the National Infrastructure Investments Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, which is called RAISE, that grant, the Homeowners Assistance Fund Program, as well as the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. Our threshold for Type A, distinguishment between A and B, is $844,000. And basically what that means is that is how we identify which programs that are going to be tested outside of the ones that are required. We're required to test programs every 3 years. So in its 3rd year, that will always be tested. And then this dollar value gives us the scope for any others that are applicable. As Nancy mentioned, you all have still qualified as the low risk auditee, which is spectacular. And then if you go 2 pages over, thank you. That is the finding that Nancy alluded to. It is not a significant deficiency, nor is it a material weakness. It is just a finding that we noted. It relates to the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds and some issues that were noted under allowable costs. It had to be reported, but it is not, as I stated, a significant deficiency or material weakness.
Can I ask a quick question on it?
Sure.
So to make sure I understand, it looks like we were allowed to pay the employee using that program through September 9th, and
Correct.
we paid them through December. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is exactly correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And so the cost associated with that was $22,000. And so that was really just as we determined to be something that was reportable, but was rectified when it was made known. Any other questions? That is the end of the single audit presentation. And then there, as Nancy alluded to, there are adjustments that are included within your packet as well. There we go. That were made, proposed. While there are several pages, there's really only 3 types. And so those related to the financial statement effect of invoices that were received, but that had been accrued, which is in accordance with the city policy, which was fine. We had another entry that we had related to gain and loss. And then we had one over a deferred inflow of AR. So these, as I stated, all were immaterial to the financial statements, but greater than trivial. So therefore they were proposed, but were passed. Before I conclude, I have to give an enormous amount of gratitude to Terry, Nancy, Carol, and the whole team for the completion of a successful audit. This audit was not easy for various reasons, but the implementation of the new standard was a very large lift. And so really want to give our sincere thanks for that for us being able to complete it and being able to present you with a clean audit. So that is all that I have presented today. Are there any other questions?
No, I don't. I don't have any questions. Just thank you for going through this, and just want to say huge congratulations to our staff for I think 37 years in a row. Nancy said that we've been awarded that award, and it's almost as long as I've been on the earth. So that's great. It just, I think, is a testament again to how well our finance department does and the great job that they all do. And so kudos to you all for your work. So thank you. Councilmember Lawson, any questions or comments?
No questions, but good job. And I ditto the comments that Councilmember Gardner stated as well. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy or Terry, anything else we need to cover on that?
Nancy, anything?
No. Again, the links to those reports will be coming soon. So you'll see an email with the links in them, and you'll be able to access those reports that are on the internet.
Great. And I mean, maybe I missed it, but I sure hope we're advertising either through communications or whatever, the fact that we've been awarded that again. I think that's great and speaks to just how great our finance staff is. So again, great job, guys. All right, item 4D, Teresa Sedmak, Series 2024 First Lien Water Revenue Bonds.
Yes, good afternoon. I am here to introduce the ordinance for the 2024 First Lien Revenue Bonds that will be issued, or proposed to be issued, in the amount up to $100 million. Those monies will be financing additions and improvements to the water system. And I should say that this is not related to the Wild Horse Reservoir. The Wild Horse Reservoir financing should start in 2026 is the anticipation. So these are proposed to be 30-year bonds. They'll be repaid through net revenues of the water system. It is anticipated price on November 19th and close on December 5th. The senior manager on the transaction will be RBC. Co-manager will be Piper Jaffray and Stiefel. So I am happy to answer any questions you might have about this financing. I believe Kat's on the line also. So if you have any questions about specific projects that are being financed, we can answer those as well. And we are asking that you approve this to go to study session.
So my only question, Teresa, is Aurora Water the entity, or is the city of Aurora the entity, since Aurora Water is an enterprise fund, or is it still through the city of Aurora? And I'm asking in the context of our recent increase in our credit rating and all that.
Aurora Water has a separate credit rating, and these will be paid through the revenues of the water system. So yes, Aurora Water is a part of the city of Aurora, but will be issued under their credit.
And how does their credit rating compare to like the overall for the city?
Their credit ratings are very strong. They're AA+ by S&P and Fitch, which is very similar to the city's ratings. The city has a AAA implied rating from Fitch and Moody's, and it's CPs. Certificates of participation are one notch lower. So all of the credit ratings of the city are excellent.
Okay. And I'm okay moving this forward. Councilmember Lawson, any questions or comments?
I have no questions, and I'm approve this moving forward as well.
All right. Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Jeffrey Edwards, Tax Administration Updates and Clarification.
Thank you, council members. This is Jeff Edwards, Manager of Tax. And this item is coming forward because of the passing of 2 Senate bills this past year. Both these bills originated in an interim committee called the Sales and Use Tax Simplification Task Force. The legislature established this task force a while back to simplify the administration of sales and use tax across the state. So the changes to the city tax code associated with the first bill can be found at the bottom of page 197 in the packet, and also continues on to page 198. These changes are associated with the Senate Bill 24023, which establishes that any vendor that uses the information in the Department of Revenue's GIS database to determine which tax the jurisdiction is owed and the general rate is held harmless in an audit by the state or any local taxing jurisdiction, including home rule cities. This applies to the tax, any charges or fees that result solely from an error in the database. The local taxing jurisdictions are not required to hold vendors harmless in cases where the vendor uses an incomplete address or erroneous address, but they are required to be held harmless when the address is entered incorrectly. Also, the vendors are required to keep documentation to show that they had actually used the system properly. And the Department of Revenue actually updates this GIS database within 30 days of receiving information from the city. And they're also required to conduct 95% accuracy testing to make sure that the addresses within the database and the rates within the database are correct. The city currently does have a hold harmless provision. However, it references some old databases, which will no longer be part of the state's ordinances. And this current new database is actually pretty slick. It can be found at colorado.ttr.services. I'd be glad to show you an example of it if you'd like to, but it's just like looking at Google, except for when it pulls up the address, it will have the rates and also potential taxability items associated with that address.
Okay.
The city does have, sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going, please.
The city does have a portal to correct any of these addresses and rates within the database, so we're actively involved with the administration of this database. The second Senate Bill 2425 modernizes and revises the state laws that govern state and local sales and use taxes. So they've made some updates in here. This is mostly just to help the state have everything within a single area and have it streamlined. But we do reference a few of the state statutes which have been changed with this Senate bill. And those are found on page 196 of the packet. It's very small, minimal change. And the last changes associated with this ordinance is the clarification of section 13075, sell a business. This is found on page 197. And this includes just identifying the taxable amounts of the personal property when the bill of sale details the amount of the taxable amount within for the sale of the business. And it also includes the taxable amount for when there's a lump sum. So we currently have within our code the ability to tax the full amount when the information is not separately stated. So this will just help us stay all streamlined with what we currently do, which is using fair market values or amounts that are associated with their depreciation for income tax purposes. And the last change, this is the associated with the statute of limitations that is fixed by the issuance of a notice of audit. So the audit section, we send out a notice saying, hey, you're going to be audited. And this portion tells the statute of limitations for those previous 3 years will be locked. And what is happening is we're finding that there are some businesses that will, for example, they'll file 6 years within those 3 years, for example. So a business wasn't licensed, they were collecting for 3 years, and then all of a sudden they came into compliance and they filed 3 years worth of returns. And then over 3 years, this notice of audit will now cover all of those periods that were filed within the last 3 years. Again, not very common, but is potentially becoming more common with those out-of-state vendors that are still trying to become compliant with the changes due to economic nexus. So that's a lot. I can go through any of those in more detail or provide examples if you would like, or if you have any questions.
Councilmember Lawson, any questions or comments?
Just one question. How much was it to do the fiscal impact, to do the updates to any system based on these legislative changes? Was there any?
There really isn't any fiscal impact for any of these changes.
Okay.
The only thing that could have potentially, if we were to no longer have a hold harmless, because the hold harmless references some old databases, but we really haven't found very many issues in audits where we have held somebody harmless. It's pretty rare. Most of the time when we were looking at businesses, they'll have some very incorrect address information, so they're not even querying a database with the incorrect with the correct information. So there really is no fiscal impact.
Okay, thank you. I approve this moving forward as well, Councilmember Gardner.
All right, and I do as well. Thanks, Jeff, for the presentation. Appreciate it.
No problem. And I do just have one more thing, council members. There is a very minor error in this current ordinance. It references, and it's actually right here on the page 197. Instead of 105.3 at the very bottom, it should be 105.2. So I will have that updated for the study session.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Next up, Trevor Vaughn, door-to-door seller's license repeal and reenactment.
Okay, great. And I didn't see Councilmember Bergen on, but this was something that she had requested we bring forward based on some interactions that one of our constituents had with some aggressive door-to-door sales personnel. The current door-to-door seller's license that we have doesn't have a lot of depth to it. It just basically requires that they file a sales tax deposit and that we issue them identification cards, but it doesn't require that they respect no soliciting signs or don't engage in aggressive sales tactics. And so this proposal coming forward would be to just repeal that old thing and kind of start over and still have a door-to-door seller's license requirement. This time we'll put the requirement of producing the identification badges on the sellers on the business to produce those, and then make sure that they actually display those when requested. Have some standards as far as conduct. The licensing requirement in the proposed ordinance does not apply to non-commercial entities, which is consistent with how it works currently. It's not applied to charities, schools, political, those types of things. However, some of the conduct standards are applied in that manner, in that if they're asked to leave, they need to leave. They can't misrepresent who they are. People can't make threats, and you can't have recent felons coming to the door. So that's kind of a standard in that, without going through all the detail, unless you want me to. Happy to take any questions on that.
Councilmember Lawson, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have just a couple. So I guess my question is, for an example, if like over in my neighborhood, we have no solicitation, but we have people who sell windows all the time. And one time I opened up the door, they didn't have any type of badge. So are you saying they would have to have a badge? And then how will we know that they are a felon? I mean, I don't understand how we would know that.
Yeah, it's a requirement that very similar to what we did with ice cream trucks. It's a requirement that the company themselves verify that they're producing that. And actually they provide that background check on this one when they submit the list of who their sales agents are. So they need to submit to the city under this ordinance who the sales agents are with a copy of their criminal background check. So we would know if they are a recent felon, and would say, hey, you can't have that individual. As far as the no soliciting, if the no soliciting is there on the specific residence, this would require that commercial solicitors do not approach that residence. They could not approach the residence at that time. Once they're also similarly, they have to take no for an answer. So if the individual says not interested, they can't just keep pushing through that. They need to move along.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have for now, Councilmember Gardner.
Okay. So yeah, I have a couple. So first of all, why would this not apply to nonprofits or non-commercial solicitation, I guess, as it's defined in the ordinance?
That was a request of Councilmember Bergen. It also, I do believe it makes it more defensible as far as any First Amendment, potentially any First Amendment challenges to the ordinance. But we, I think Hans, I don't know if Hans, do you have anything to add to that? Hans, if you're on. Oh, actually, he's out today. Yeah, so that was just mainly a request of hers, that political canvassers and such wouldn't apply to them. So I think we could look at that if that's something council would be interested in.
Okay. And then I'm curious about the background check. It says such persons has been convicted of a felony in the last 6 years or been incarcerated within the last 6 years or an equivalent offense. Where did that come from? Was that just a number that was picked, 6 years, or
Yeah, that's basically it. Just kind of a determinate time frame that, as far as a time frame where somebody could demonstrate that they aren't reoffending or going to reoffend. And I think similar to what we'd seen, I'd seen it in another ordinance in another location. I can't remember which one, in a very similar provision.
Okay.
I think it was Fort Collins.
Okay. So I don't, this feels unenforceable to me. I mean, it sounds great, but it feels unenforceable. So, and also it feels like occupational licensing by another name. Like, to me, I don't know why we would pick and I'm not picking on staff. I just like picking an arbitrary 6 years. To me, when somebody's paid their debt to society and they're released from jail, I don't know why we would say, well, for 6 years you can't do this, and then after 6 years in one day, all of a sudden you're magically able to do this. Like that's to me is silly. So I'm not, I don't, I'm not supportive of this. To me, it needs some work and some changes before I would support it. I don't know, Councilmember Lawson, where you're at in terms of bringing it forward or whatever, but I'm not a fan of occupational licensing. I'm not a fan of unenforceable laws, and this feels like both. And so I don't, it's going to turn into, I guess I don't undersee how, if somebody comes to the door and engages in some of this behavior, I don't know how it's really going to be enforced. How, like, it's going to turn into a he said, she said. Like, it's kind of like the dog barking ordinance, or like, what's some of the others, the housing occupancy, or like there's a variety of ordinances we have that essentially are unenforceable. And this feels like another one. Like, it feels good, it sounds good, but I don't know that we really can enforce it. And also, I just don't like saying that somebody can't do something once they paid their debt to society. Like, if they're released from prison, they're released from prison. And I just don't like saying, well, you can't do this, and then all of a sudden at 6 years in one day, you magically can. Like that to me. So for those reasons, I'm not supportive of this in its current form. Councilmember Lawson, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And also just the enforceability, but because I have to be complaint driven, right, Trevor? Like, the homeowner would have to call the city. And then again, like Councilmember Gardner said, it would probably be a he say, she say. And so I just don't, I agree with a lot of the points that Councilmember Gardner brought up. And I don't think this is something that I want to move forward at this time. So I'm a no.
Okay, so then sounds like this will not move forward right now. Thanks for the presentation, though, Trevor. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor.
All right, next up, Trevor's up again. Technical adjustment to short-term rental regulations.
Yeah, this is just cleaning it up a little bit, moving a bullet around so that it reads as it should. It has to deal with that it needs to be a person's primary residence. So just kind of cleaning up something from 3 years ago.
Okay. I'm okay with moving it forward, Councilmember Lawson.
Okay as well.
All right. Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And last up, Michelle Crawford, Q2 2024 internal audit update.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Michelle Crawford, City Auditor. So second quarter updates. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So overall updates, we did have a resignation in May for the police auditor. Due to challenges in filling that position, we have switched it and reclassified it to another senior auditor position. And we are hiring for that position right now. We'll continue to have the police audit plan, but we'll just rotate those audits across the entire team versus having one dedicated person, just due to the challenges we were having with that position. We have started our annual risk assessment process, and this is what we use to help us to begin the process to developing our audit plans. Additionally, we do have our first peer review or quality assurance review for this office scheduled in August, midway through the month. And additionally, of note, Laiba Sakib passed her final exam to become a certified internal auditor this quarter. So congrats to Laiba. We have no audit plan updates right now. Active this quarter, we are doing a firearms inventory for police, and then we're working on an HR compliance audit. Engagement tracking updates. So we've completed a couple engagements we're going to go through, but this is the new percentage that we're tracking, a percentage of recommendations accepted, and we are still at 100% for each auditee of accepting all recommendations in our audits. This next slide depicts our performance measure for the percentage of audits completed as compared to the plan. We wrapped out 2023 with 55% of engagements completed, and so for 2024, we're looking at 25% right now, active or completed. Additional engagement tracking updates. So this lists all of the departments and those that started the year with recommendations or have added them. It's in the backup as well. Green is in progress. Blue means they've closed it out since beginning of the year. And then orange are completed and they're just pending our final approval. So next, we're going to go through the 2 completed engagements, and I'm going to kick it off with the review of non-competitive purchases. So this is purchasing. So the audit objective was to review those non-competitive purchases, so single source, sole source, emergency purchases, and reviewing to see if adequate documentation existed, if there was compliance with city requirements, and if policies, procedures, and practices were efficient, effective, and followed those leading practices. Our conclusion was that audit documentation did not always exist to support compliance with city requirements, and that purchasing services did not always have adequate procedures and practices in place. The first finding we're to review is memos of justification. So the BPM does require having a memo of justification to document why a non-competitive purchase is being used. And what we found is 40% of the purchases we reviewed did not have a documented memo of justification. Additionally, that BPM also requires that purchasing review those memos to make sure they are in compliance. However, we had no support to show that those reviews were actually occurring. Our recommendation was to establish standardized procedures and templates for those memos and for departments and purchasing to develop procedures and training to make sure we're in compliance. And that was completed in June of 2024 after the audit. The next area is conflicts of interests. And so while city staff have historically completed conflicts of interest for competitive purchases, for non-competitive purchases, city staff were not completing them. Additionally, purchasing staff was not completing conflicts of interest for any purchases. Our recommendation was that purchasing develops procedures for its employees to address conflicts of interest for each procurement type and for all employees for non-competitive purchases. And this was completed in June of 2024. Additionally, purchasing did not have internal procedures documenting their operations, and we did recommend that they develop those incorporating leading practices, BPMs, and city code where appropriate, and that they did complete this prior to the audit's release in June. So I'm going to go to our second audit right now, and our senior auditor, Cherie Van Buren, is going to go through the facilities audit. So Cherie.
Great, thank you. So for the facilities management engagement, we did have 3 objectives on your screen, and those were to determine whether policies and procedures existed and whether they followed leading practices for preventative and scheduled maintenance and inspections, to determine if procedures to ensure timely maintenance activities were being followed, and to determine if the city has a detailed schedule, including responsibilities for maintenance activities at city-owned facilities and if it was being followed. Next slide. So our conclusion, we did conclude that the policies and procedures did not exist for all key areas. Maintenance activities are not always being performed in a timely manner, and data is not being collected adequately to monitor timely activities. And then due to that insufficient data, we were unable to conclude on the objective of the detailed maintenance schedule and if it was being followed. So I'm just going to go over a few of the key recommendations from the engagement. The first one being work order prioritization. Currently, work orders are assigned based on a first in, first out basis, or based on the supervisor's judgment. Not defining priorities or using some sort of decision-making framework or matrix can lead to inefficient, inconsistent, and inappropriate response times. Being able to prioritize work based on criticality or level of significance can help facility staff optimize their productivity by identifying and prioritizing tasks with the most risk, impact, and value. So the recommendation there was for management to develop that prioritization schedule, decision-making framework or matrix to be able to better triage work orders and service requests. The next two recommendations go hand in hand, the job standards and supervisor inspections. If you can go back to the prior page. So currently there's no job standard criteria or job quality checklist that supervisors would be able to use to evaluate the work performed by internal staff and external contracted work. And so the recommendation there was to develop those standards so that supervisors would be able to visually inspect the work done by internal and external staff and across all lines of service. And when I say lines of service, that's heating, ventilation, air conditioning, plumbing, technician, locksmith, general maintenance. And then also that could be used for external staff as well, anytime we contract out work, just to ensure that the job is being completed against standards and quality. And then the supervisor inspections, once the standards are established, supervisors would be able to review staff's completed work, both visually and within the system with any data input that may be required. Currently, management relies on staff to report on work completion. However, there are no reviews. And so a part of this recommendation is also ensuring that the reviews are equitable amongst staff and also equitable amongst the lines of service. Next slide, please. The next recommendation is around performance measures. Currently, facilities maintenance is not achieving performance measures at any of the facilities we reviewed. The current goal is to respond 100% of completion of those service requests and work orders within the 30-day period. And that's an internal and external performance measure. And some of the recommendation there would be to develop and monitor performance measures for facilities maintenance divisions, incorporating leading practices. And some of those leading practices include performance measures based on those priority schedules that we discussed already, and then also different performance measures based on, the level of difficulty of work or based on the line of service. The next recommendation is around data collection. So better data collection could definitely improve being able to monitor and track performance measures. And also better data can improve management decision making. Based on our review of the current work order management system, there were incomplete or unused fields that could be better used to report on work orders. And we understand that the division is currently under a greater effort to purchase a new work order management software, and that could help improve the data collection. And that, again, just leads back to performance measures, because when you have better data, you can monitor, track, and report on those performance measures. And the next page. And then the next recommendation is around policies and procedures. What we identified was a lot of work guides not necessarily division policy and procedure documents, those written directives that outline exactly how the job is to be accomplished. And so the recommendation was to develop and revise any current division policies and procedures. This does include updating any guidance documents to reflect current practices, system names, etc. Also developing any new policies and procedures based on the recommendations provided in the report. It would require some training for current staff on any new policies and procedures, and also level setting some of those expectations across the city as well. And then the final recommendation I'll touch on is the personal use of city tools. We did recommend the discontinuance of that immediately, and that was implemented prior to the audit's conclusion. And so at this point, I'm happy to take any questions for the facility management report, or I believe we have some public works staff online as well to answer any questions.
Councilmember Lawson, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
I do not either. Thanks, Michelle and Sherry, for your updates.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's see. With that, I think that is. Oh.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we're at the end of the agenda.
Yep.
And our next meeting is scheduled for August 27th.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your patience. I know we had a lot to get through today, and we got through it. So everybody have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll see everybody next month.
Thank you.
Bye.